Pai nosso, que estais no céu, santificado seja o vosso nome. Venha a nós o vosso reino, seja feita a vossa vontade, assim na terra como no céu, assim na terra como no céu. O pão nosso de cada dia dai-nos hoje, ó Senhor. Perdoai as nossas dívidas, assim como perdoamos aos nossos devedores. Não deixeis cair em tentação, mas livrai-nos de todo o mal. Não deixeis cair em tentação, mas livrai-nos de todo o mal.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Good morning for us in the US. Good afternoon for those that are in the UK and the rest of the world. We are very happy today because we have our dear friend Tania STEVANIN with us to give us a talk. And we would like to greet her and to welcome her. But at the same time, we would also like to greet every one of you that has been following us. We have started this series of talks. It's been since April, and we have been very happy to have all of you following with us, and also everyone that has been attending, the guest speakers that have been also giving wonderful talks to us, a lot of things for us to meditate. As always, we start with our prayer, then I'm going to introduce Tania, and she is going to start her talk. So I invite you all to close your eyes, to connect with the On High, thinking about the spirits, the benefactors that are helping us and guiding us. And in particular, today, we ask for their guidance for Tania so that we can be inspired and learn from her words, from her presentation, and that we all that are accompanying this talk now may feel the love and light of our brother Jesus and the love and mercy of our Heavenly Creator. Okay, so let me introduce Tania. Dr. Tania STEVANIN is the co-founder of the Sheffield Spiritist Group and the first person to bring Spiritism to Sheffield. Before that, she worked in London with the Allan Kardec Spiritist Center. She has a PhD in microbiology and a diploma in psychology. For the past 11 years, she has been working in the treatment of people with substance misuse, the past 10 with the NHS. But besides that, Tania and I and Joao, we have been friends for 27 years. It's been 27 years when we moved to London and we met Tania, and there we worked together. We worked together at the Allan Kardec Spiritist Center, and she has been a dear person, spirit, special person in our lives since then. So Tania, thank you so much for doing this for us today. And please, you can start now your talk.
Thank you, Justara. Yeah, it's been a long time since we've been working together, and it's a pleasure to have this collaboration restarted. It's a great joy to be participating in this event with you guys, and I hope that you will enjoy that as well. So I'm going, the topic of my presentation today, I decided to be a bit cheeky and call it the end of the world and how to survive it. Because especially within Spiritism, ever since I started studying Spiritism, we started talking and hearing about the transition period that the earth goes through, that humanity goes through, moving from a world of trials and atonement and hopefully to a world of regeneration. But so I'm going to start with a quote from the Gospel, a quote from Matthew, and I'll read it out for you. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginnings of the birth pain. So if you look at the beginning, most of these quotes talks about wars and famines and really terrible things if you think about just a human lifetime. However, at the end, it also talks about the birth pain. And although it concentrates on the pain, a lot of the times we forget about the birth. And birth is renewal, is life, is happiness, is joy, is positive transformation. So it is important for us to pay attention to the signs, but also to remember what comes afterwards. So this quote takes us, to a place of we start looking for the calamities. And now, if we watch the news, every news, we can identify many of the signs quoted here in this passage from Matthew. So that is, the end of the world kind of thing. And then after I talk a bit more about it, then we'll look at how to survive it because others survived before, so should we. So what is the end of the world? It says, again, a quote from Mark that when will these things be accomplished? And it follows by saying no one knows about the hour, the day or the hour, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. So even Jesus, he was saying, change will take place, but the absolute minute of it is not known by anyone, not even the angels, not even I know that, only the Father. So let's think about what the end of the world really means. Every culture, every religious doctrine or philosophy talks about the end of the world. So the end of the world, we know that when those philosophies talk about it, and even Spiritism explains it a little bit better because it explains that it's not the end of Earth, it's not the destruction of Earth, but it is the destruction of the social constructs, the societies as we know it, where a lot of change will take place. A lot of things will cease to be and new things will come into place. So we cannot pinpoint. Kardec started mentioning this ever since the beginning of his development of the Spiritist teachings more than 150 years ago. And we talk and talk and talk about it. And I'll share something personal with you. A few months ago, before the pandemic and the lockdowns, and I know that all over the world there has been a lot of change in the past few months. But a few months ago, when the only thing we had to really worry about was what was happening in terms of politics and the economics, the environment was not at the top of the agenda, but being talked about a lot as well. I remember I went through a phase where especially when we were studying this part of the Spiritist teachings, I started getting really impatient, as humans do. And I started getting very impatient for the world to get on with it and start again. Because according to Spiritism, what we see as the transition, the phase of transition is where what we see as the negative aspects of human thinking and behavior not comes to an end, but diminishes. So selfishness, wars, diseases, poverty, it won't be completely eradicated, but will be diminished, will become a lot better. So I started thinking, especially in Brazil, there has been a lot of political turmoils, and in the UK, and I know in the States as well. So all over the world, and that's not even to mention the many countries that are at war at the moment. And I became really, really impatient for the world as we knew it to end, so that the new, more peaceful, happier, more fraternal world to be born. And and what I found was that I started getting very much into the negative vibes from the news, from other things, and I started getting very angry. So I was getting angry with politicians, I was getting angry with people who committed crimes. And then, as it happens, during the time during one of my prayers, I got an insight, and I'm absolutely certain that it was one of my spiritual benefactors. I have some very good spiritual benefactors who tell me the truth as it is, and they don't mince their words. They're like good friends who tell you as it is, and they don't try to soften it and make it feel better just to please you. So this time, the message that came to me was that, why are you so bothered about the end of the world when you're not really doing much to change yourself? You want the world to change around you. What about changing yourself? So what? And this is something that really resonated with me, because what came to me was that, so what if your beliefs about this period of transition is not to happen? So what if God changed its mind and decided that this world will stay exactly as it is, receiving the spirits that need to be here, to be healed, to learn, to be more fraternal, to face the challenges that this world provides us with, the learning experiences that this world provides us with, and that's that. It's not for you to decide what kind of world you're going to have. However, if you want to be part of a better world, then what you need is to change yourself. So if this world doesn't change, then you can at least be admitted to a better world when you leave this one. So I came back from this prayer with a different mental attitude, because now I was thinking, yeah, you know what? That is true. A lot of the times we want the world to change around us, and we forget that the world that is most important for us to change is our inner world, our mental attitude, the way we respond to the things around us. Uh, there is a lot of research, neurological research, that shows that the way we think affects not only our neurochemistry, the hormones we produce, but also the geography of the brain. It affects the way our neurons connect with each other. It affects even the areas of the brain that are more active or less active. So the way I like to describe it to my patients is, when we are trying to change a very old, ingrained set of behaviors, is like we are walking through this really dense forest, and we have a very clear track that we are used to treading, and we go through that down that track every single day. So it's clear, it's straight, it's smooth, and now we need to open a new track. We need to start from scratch and open a complete new track. So to begin with, it is difficult, it's hard, it's very challenging. However, every time we force our minds to go through that track, we clear the ground a little bit, and every time we move on, it becomes clearer, straighter, smoother, easier to thread. And what happens to the old track? The old tracks, the weeds start growing in there, the trees will start growing there again, and at some point, the default track will be the new one, and the old one, we won't even notice it's there anymore. But to begin with, it takes a lot of effort. So I'm going back to the birth pains. If it happens at an individual level with each one of us, the same process takes place at the level of society and at the level of the world itself. So every time massive change is to take place, there will be conflict, not necessarily wars, but conflict. Why? Because we are shaking the old structures before we build new ones. We might even need to destroy the old structures before we can build a new one. And that happens with the world as well. And we can't pinpoint the time. There are certain events that kind of illustrate that things are happening. There are two main ways in which change takes place. The one we are most familiar with is the smooth, gradual one. So I was having a conversation with my eldest nephew a few years ago now. He was about 25 at the time. And I could clearly see he was my brother's firstborn, and he had many of my brother's characteristics, good and bad, as well as his mother's, as it happens with every children from every generation. And he was driving, and I picked up on one particular moment when he behaved exactly like his father did. So I said to him, listen, every generation has the moral obligation to improve on the previous one. So you observe your parents, and if you think that something they do is good, is helpful, then you copy that. But if you notice that something is not good, is not helpful, then you leave that. You don't copy that. And that's how you improve from your parents to your generation, and your children will have the same obligation as well. So, as society, as individuals, we have the obligation to improve on the previous social grouping that came before us. So, every generation, there is technological development, there is also some moral development. Every time we have recently, not that recently, it's about 3-4 years ago now, it seems only yesterday, that the UK voted to leave the European community. So it's being known as the Brexit, and I'm sure everybody heard about that. And a lot of the ideologies that led people to vote for Brexit are based on nostalgia. So, how does nostalgia work? Nostalgia makes us think about the past as if it was this wonderful paradise time on earth. They talk a lot about the war, and they talk about how neighbors helped each other, how everybody pulled together to rebuild the country, how the nation was a nation to be proud of. And this is what we miss. They don't talk about all the destruction. They don't talk about all the death. They don't talk about toilets outside houses. And here in the UK, it's cold. You don't want to get up in the middle of the night and have to go outdoors to use the toilet. That's not remembered because that's not how nostalgia works. Nostalgia remembers everything that's good. Nostalgia does not remember all the people that died of infections because antibiotics are not known. Nostalgia doesn't remember that the majority of the population lived way below the poverty line because a very tiny minority held all the power, all the resources, all the riches. Nostalgia look at the films that we watch on television and think, oh, wasn't that nice? The reality is it wasn't. The world of today is a much better world than the world of yesterday. The world of yesterday, of I'd say 50, 100 years ago, does not exist anymore. So that world has ended. And we have a new world, a new set of rules, a new set of beliefs, a new set of principles that we have improved on the previous one. So we, each other, have perhaps gone through many different ends of the world. We changed our world, our inner world, when we change a job. when we move from the country where we were born to a different country, when we suddenly, not suddenly, but gradually, and feel sudden when you make the final decision, you realize that the religious philosophical principles we believed before no longer fits in with our new set of beliefs, and we start looking for new ones. So most of the times the change is gradual and almost imperceptible. Sometimes, however, at certain times during human history, we can observe rapid change where a lot changes very quickly in a very short space of time. And it feels very unsettling for all of those going through that period. We look back in history and we see the great wars, the great famines. The Middle Ages is a classical example when the old and antiquity world almost feels like it was destroyed overnight, and then with people went to sleep in antiquity and woke up in Middle Ages. That's not how it happened. It's how we perceive it now. But there are times in which change happens much more suddenly, and it feels quite sudden, even for those of us going through those changes. A classical example is what we are going through right now with this world pandemic. I was describing this to a friend of mine recently because, being a microbiologist, I was one of my colleagues said, you're usually 2 or 3 weeks ahead of the government, because I kept saying this is going to be happening in 2 or 3 weeks time if this continues in the same way. And it happened. Am I super intelligent? No. I just had, they are being advised by scientists who lectured me, who were part of my life when I was working with microbiology. I am familiar with how microorganisms spread, how disease develops. So I could look ahead a few days ahead from most other people, managers, politicians, perhaps. But what caught my attention was, as a spiritist and being aware of how certain life forms they vibrate, they live kind of between the physical and the spiritual world. They are kind of bridges between the two worlds, the world of spirit and the world of matter, the world of pure energy and the world of more condensed energy, because obviously everything in the universe is energy. And viruses are like that. Viruses can be a manifestation of the diseased, emotional, energetic environment in which we live. I remember one of my lecturers a few years ago saying, "Oh, don't come close to me because you catch this cold." And I said, "I'll catch the cold if I am susceptible to it. If I make myself susceptible to it, then I will catch it." And he disagreed. But then we talked a little bit about the difference between the physical manifestations of certain illnesses and the mental, spiritual manifestation of certain illnesses. I work with people now who, without catching any physical illnesses, manifest all kinds of symptoms in their minds constantly because they live in an intoxicated mental atmosphere. And this conversation I was having with one of my colleagues a few months ago about the pandemic was basically, I was saying the world caught a cold. So it's not just individual anymore, it's generalized. Because as human beings, as spiritual entities, energetic entities, we interact with each other all the time. We exchange energy with each other all the time. If the energy levels drop to more toxic levels, then we can materialize certain illnesses. And it can be a cold, it can be a pandemic, it can be something else. It can be a war, because a war is like a human cancer, a social cancer in a way, which is very destructive. So this world is ending, and sometimes the changes can be very rapid. However, let's go back to the birth pains, because the disturbance, the pain, the anguish that we feel is because we are we are not familiar with the new one yet. Something is being, the structures as we know it, as we are familiar with, are disappearing, and we don't have new structures to feel comfortable with yet. So it creates a lot of uncertainties. It creates a lot of fear. It creates a lot of conflict between old ideas and new ideas. Using an example that I'm sure most people are familiar with, and it's very recent, although it hasn't been on our news recently, I will bring forward Greta Thunberg. So a child, an individual who decided that she was going to do something personally because she was not happy with the way we were treating the world, and she wanted to have her voice heard. That was like a pebble that starts an avalanche. The avalanche, that one was kind of halted for a while because of the pandemic, but it kind of brings to mind how even one individual can start massive international conversations about topics that are important. How it's going to end, we don't know. But what I remember seeing was that there were two camps. There is a camp that agreed with her and wanted change to happen very quickly and wanted to put pressure on politicians and agree that we have a duty, a moral duty to look after the world. And there was the camp that didn't agree with her, found her very annoying, found her very disruptive, and wanted nothing better but to just leave things be as they were. Somewhere in the middle is reason, because we know that certain changes will not happen overnight, but it is also true that we cannot stand still. Things will change, whether we like it or not. And how do we contribute to this change? So I quote in the Bible again. I would say that the time appointed by God has arrived. It arrives every day when we wake up, when we open our eyes. We can start change and continue change every day of our lives. But from a global perspective, there are certain things that we will not be able to go back to as they were. And I think this pandemic illustrates that very clearly. Even if the virus disappeared yesterday, I would not today have woken up on the pre-pandemic day, because there are certain things that have been damaged beyond repair. Companies are closing down, people are losing jobs, social beliefs and structures have been shaken to the core, and will need it's helping a lot of people to question everything about their lives, about their beliefs, etc. But let's remember that in creation as a whole, there is harmony, there is reason, there is purpose. So the physical changes are less important in a way than the moral change. So the world evolves physically, intellectually, and morally. So we evolve in our intelligence, and that is very perceptible because the new developments in science and technology shows that. I was telling one of my younger colleagues yesterday, I was born before the internet existed. I still struggle with certain aspects of technology. And for her, it's second nature. She grew up in a world that, technology, mobile phones are everywhere. She does not know any different. I came from a different world where these things didn't exist. And I look at the future and I think, am I going to be able to keep up? I hope so, because we are very adaptable, but intellectual change can happen very quickly. And we look from one year to the next and we don't notice, we forget how things were before, when I didn't have a mobile phone. So if I was late, I couldn't be contacted. So, it is good that we do have that. Today proves that. But there is moral progress as well. And moral progress, unfortunately, tends to go slower. And this is where we can make a bigger contribution to our world at the moment as it's happening. So this is where I'm going to bring the second part of this talk, which is how to survive the end of the world. First of all, is reminding ourselves that it's okay for the world to end, and it's okay not to be afraid of it. It's okay to feel uncomfortable with some of the changes, because what happens is our brains perceive change as error. So when it's the same as when you taste something you have never tasted before, a new flavor, and you don't know if you like it or not. That's where the expression acquired taste comes from. When we experience something new, very new, it's difficult to sometimes tell whether we like it or not. We need to try it again a few more times for us to decide. Because initially our brains perceive that message, those signals, as error signals. So it doesn't know where it's going. And it thinks, do I need to reboot the computer? Do I need to shut down completely? Can I just carry on? Was that just a little blip? So when big changes take place, it takes us a while to adjust to it and to see the benefits of it. Going back to the birth pains again, birth is painful for both mother and child. It's a traumatic experience. It brings an awful lot of changes. However, once we are through and the newborn is there in our arms, we don't remember the pain. We remember it, but we experience it in a very detached way, because the joy of that newborn in our arms is so much bigger than the pain we had to endure that most people forget it so much that they go and have more babies. So we are going through the birth of a new epoch, of a new world. We don't know how long it's going to take. It might take a few more years. It might take a few more centuries. That's not for us to decide. This is what I came to understand when I started getting impatient with certain situations and certain people. I don't need to be in a hurry, because the one thing I can do is to look inward into my inner world and ask myself, what do I need to change, improve, strengthen within myself that I can control, that I can do something about? And that's how we survive the bigger change, the international, global changes that we have to go through, maybe in this lifetime, maybe in another lifetime. Remembering that the fruits only come at the right time under the right conditions. So there are certain things that we should not try to speed up, but we need to tender that plant, to look after it, so that the fruits can come and ripen in the right way so that we can enjoy it afterwards. So it is the way things change is more like a battle of ideas, of principles, of beliefs, which we can be part of. And let's think about thought again. So I was telling you a little bit earlier on how our thoughts can change not just the neurobiochemistry of our brains, but even how our neurons connect. In the past, until not very long ago, people used to think that once the brain develops, it stays put, nothing changes. So if you damage an area of the brain, you cannot recover that function. Nowadays, more studies using function MRI, and also studying people with brain damage, others through strokes or brain tumors. It is known that the brain is not static. Even the geography of the brain, people who suffer from severe epilepsy, there are a few cases where the only solution is to remove half of the brain. So you think that if you remove half of somebody's brain, that person is a vegetable. Actually, no. The other half compensates for a lot of the functions that have been lost in the half that's been removed. So the person has not a normal life like we often think of, but a very fulfilling life. There will be certain aspects that are going to be challenging, like movement, speech, may need to be, a person may need to learn to walk again or to speak again, and there might be some disturbing side effects there for life, but it is better than having seizures every 15 minutes for the rest of their lives, because now they can go to university, they can get a job, they can get married, they can have children. So it proves that the brain is not the static system that it was thought to be before. So how is that? So the brain, if you think about the brain as the hardware and the thoughts as the software, and the spirit is the programmer. It's our spirit, our willpower that programs the software that is transmitted through the hardware that causes action to take place, behavior to take place. There is also something called cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonance is when our beliefs and what we are supposed to do clash. So I work with people with substance misuse. A lot of the people I work drink a lot and use drugs, and they come to me because they want to change that. It's ruining their lives, their health, their relationships, and they want to stop that. However, changing that kind of behavior is really difficult. It is very challenging. And it creates conflict. So if you believe that you want to change, you need to change, but your whole body is asking for the thing you've been using every day, it takes an awful lot of willpower to say no. And I describe it as two wants clashing, two individual but conflicting wants clashing. They want to change and they want to stay the same. It creates a conflict, a psychological conflict, and we resolve that psychological conflict by the belief and the action becoming the same or similar. So I need to believe that I don't get any joy out of using this substance. It only brings evil into my life, despite the fact that in the past I used to use it to help me sleep or to cope with stress. Now I have to find a different way to cope with stress. Racism is another good example, and probably a better one, because in many countries there are laws that protect individuals against prejudice related to color, religion, gender orientation. But that might go against my core beliefs. I might be the kind of person that doesn't like a certain type of individual. But now the law makes me interact with that person, and or because I work with them and I can't use certain names anymore, certain words anymore. So how do I resolve that? I resolve that by concentrating my attention, focusing my attention on the positives of that individual. So instead of concentrating my attention on the negative, the things that I am prejudiced against, I concentrate on how kind they are, how helpful they have been to me, how polite they are, and I start liking them. Then the conflict is resolved, because now I don't have to be prejudiced anymore because I like that person. I don't have to use substances anymore because now I develop a different lifestyle. That happens across the world as well. And this is what we're seeing when cultures clash. So a certain culture is a lot of the youth movement illustrates that when new generations come and challenge the old set of beliefs, the old dictators, and want change, and the old school resist, and the society comes into conflict. It's like a cognitive conflict, but not individually anymore. Now it is a global societal conflict. How can that be resolved? It can be resolved peacefully, because that's the only way to resolve this kind of conflict. Because otherwise, if we go to war, then we are only going to create more conflict. To be able to resolve those differences, we need to go back and find ways to live with each other and to cause change in a peaceful manner. So, peaceful transformations. And how can we individually contribute to that? So, how can we survive when our world is crashing around us like that? We survive by tapping into this powerhouse that we call our cognitive functioning, our thought processes, by identifying thought patterns that are unhelpful and changing them to something more helpful. So, for example, fear. What is fear? Fear is the same as faith, is the same principle, but fear believes blindly sometimes in the negative, in something bad. Faith believes completely in something good, in the solutions to my problems, in the positive. Fear believes that I am being persecuted by evil spirits, by my neighbors. Faith believes that I'm being guided by my benefactors, by God, that I'm being helped by those around me. Same energy, but in opposite directions. So, what I'm going to be doing with you guys now in a minute is to do a meditation exercise that you can do in 5 minutes or half an hour or an hour. It depends of each person can take as long as they like. And this meditation involves two aspects. The first one is helping ourselves, it's a form of self-healing. And the second one is a form of healing others, healing the world. So if you would like to take part in this meditation, just find a place where you can sit down, or you can even, if you're at home, you can lie down and close your eyes and just, find comfortable place to sit or lie down, and you can just gently close your eyes. And the first thing to remember is that there is no right or wrong for this. If your mind drifts, you can bring it back. Just listen to my voice again. And I want you to imagine something just for a moment. Imagine that you create around yourselves a dome. You can imagine yourselves inside a bubble or a dome of light. This dome is transparent. You can see through it, and others can see through it as well. But the beauty of this dome is that you are inside and the world is outside. And inside the dome, you are comfortable, you're happy, you're in control of your life, and you're safe. Inside this dome, everything is good because you're protected, because this barrier around you is a semi-permeable barrier. It doesn't allow anything negative to come through from the outside into this dome. So all the negativity, all the anger, all destruction, all the conflict are outside. Inside, there is light, peace, safety, and the good things can live and irradiate outwards. So as you're finding yourself in this dome, I want you now to picture in your mind's eye a shower, like a rain, but a different rain. This rain is made of light. And I want you to pay attention and notice an individual droplet. And it looks like a diamond in the sun. It shines, it's beautiful. Now imagine a rain pouring down from your head all the way down to your feet, And as it pours over you, it washes your skin, washing away all the tension, all the negativity. If there's a part of your body that's a bit achy, it washes away that pain, all the way down from your head, down your body, and going out into the soil, into the ground, washing away. Now, this shower of light penetrates your skull, penetrates your body, and you can see it washing your brain, washing all negative thoughts, all negative feelings, washing your eyes, through your throat, washing your heart, your cardiac system, washing away all the feelings of fear, discomfort, anxiety, and washes away your lungs, cleansing, making it easier to breathe as you breathe in peace and relaxation, and breathe out stress, fear. And this rain of light continues to wash all the way down your stomach, your gut, all the way down, washing all the negative feelings, thoughts. And now you watch as it is shower of light not just washes away everything that's negative or painful, but now it penetrates every cell, bringing energy, saturating every cell in your body with this positive healing energy of light, of health, of hope. And you can look at your body, and every organ in your body, every cell now shines like this beautiful diamond in the sun. And this light radiates out. Now you have become this powerhouse of positive energy. In the same way, you allow this beautiful light to bring healing into your life, protection, safety. You can make a contribution to the energies around you, irradiating out. And as we join together as we are now, we can join with others, with each other, with people across the world who may be praying, who may be meditating, who may be engaged in acts of kindness. And if we imagine each one of us creating a link with each other like a strand of light, like a spider's web, where every strand is meaningful, it has a purpose, and it adds to the beauty and the strength of that structure. Now imagine our world enveloped in these strands of light that we are part of, and in this way we can help our world to progress, to clean itself of the negative energies, thoughts, feelings, and move on into a better world where people are kinder to each other, more patient with each other, where hope prevails over fear. Now just take a moment just to enjoy this peaceful feeling. And now you can bring your attention back to the present, to where you are. Bring some movement to your feet, your toes, your fingers. Open your eyes. but always retaining these feelings of peace, of inner strength, knowing that we can make a contribution not just to our own well-being, but to the well-being of the whole world. For we are part of it, we vibrate with it. So, the take-home message is we don't have to fear the end of the world, and we can continue to make a contribution and survive, because we're not just existing, but we are being part of this change, an active and positive part of this change. So we want the old world to end and we want the new one to be born, but it's a gradual process and we can all be part of it. And I hope that you will finish today feeling inspired to continue making this beautiful contribution that I know you're all making. And thank you very much for allowing me to be part of it. I can take questions now.
Thank you, Tania. That was wonderful. Oof. Let me breathe here first. Okay. So yeah, we have a couple of questions. I'll show them here so we can read together. Okay. So many people say that the world is not getting better. What's Spiritism view on that?
Joan, I can't read it. So can you just repeat that again?
Yes, many people say that the world is not getting better. What's Spiritism view on that?
I don't even think Spiritism needs to be part of the equation here, because logic demonstrates that the world is getting better. Spiritism believes that, because Spiritism believes in positive change. Spiritism doesn't see difficulties, even errors, as something bad, but as learning opportunities. So the Spiritist view is, if you find that you did really badly in one lifetime or in one day, you pick yourself up, you accept that an error has been done, and you try to fix it. So Spiritism always has a positive take on change, and psychology does as well. Mindfulness is, I was doing a training on compassion and acceptance therapy, which is science word for Spiritism, basically, because it's all about being kind to one another. If we look about the practicalities, the technology we have these days, the fact that within the last 3 years, even less than that, we've gone from a society or societies that accepted certain behaviors, like, for example, sexual harassment. Near 2 years ago, jokes were acceptable, certain behaviors in offices, at work, on the streets were just taken as the norm. You know, women didn't find that they could even denounce certain things at work, for example, from fear of losing their jobs. And now nobody dares just say, no, that's fine, you know, women should just put up with it. And I'm just using this example, not because I'm a woman, but because it's something that's happened very quickly, within months, recently. So if we look, there will be lots more examples of things that improved, even in the past 5 years, let alone 5 decades or 5 centuries. So what gives us the perception sometimes that the world is getting worse is because the media is very biased against the negative. Why? Because tragedies, big, massive, fearful headlines sells newspapers, keep people watching TV, and we became almost a society of voyeurists, because we feed on the tragedies across the world. I watch the news with the remote control in my hand. When they start showing very gruesome details of the horrors of certain regions in the world, especially where there are wars or terrible things, I change the channel. I change the channel and I say a prayer. So it's not that I'm ignoring the fact that there is terrible things happening in the world, but I'm going to use that knowledge in a positive way. So I'm protecting my home from those images, I'm protecting my mind from those images, but I'm making a positive contribution at the same time. So we have to be a bit more selective, I think, in terms of the news we watch, the conversations we have. And I think every newspaper, there is a little local paper here in the UK called the Metro, that is a free distribution. And one section right at the end of it is about people saying thank you. So messages that people send to strangers about, oh, thank you very much to the stranger that gave me a seat on the bus the other day. Thank you very much to the stranger that found my wallet and returned it. And I think every news report should contain at least a third of it. A third should be just telling us about the horrible things that are happening in the world that needs to change. A third should be about the things that we are improving. And a third should be about the wonderful things that people are already doing in the world that's not being acknowledged and recognized. So I personally feel that the world is getting better, not worse.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, great advice. I like that. So, watch TV and change the channels and pray. That's perfect.
Yeah.
So our friend Glaucio Pessoa asks, how to calm down people who listen to too many conspiracy theories, are in a constant state of fear?
Hi, Glaucio. That's a really, really good one, because, yeah, it is so easy. I was lectured by a client the other day while I was looking for the appointments, and it took me a while. I had a whole lecture about how the pandemic is caused by the 5G network. As a microbiologist, I find that very difficult to even engage with. So I just let her talk. A lot of the time, the conspiracy theorists are very much. Conspiracy can be like an addiction. That's psychologically speaking. That's how it manifests itself. Some people become hooked on that, and they get a buzz out of it. So every time they share that information, they talk to each other about it, they get a buzz out of it. And it becomes very hard, because the reality is that it creates an emotional roller coaster. You go up and you come down. You go up with, oh my God, this is what's happening. And then the fear. And it creates quite a lot of powerful emotions that people become addicted to. And one of my clients many years ago in one of our support groups, he was talking about abstinence. And he was a gentleman who really, when he hit the bottle, he hit it hard. It was not every day, but when it happened, it was horrendous. And he one day came up and said, you know what, Tanya, the problem I find is that abstinence is boring. And we had a really meaningful conversation about that, because that is it, guys. Life, normal life, can be really boring. It can be very dull, because it doesn't change very much. You wake up, you go to work, you do your work, you come back, you have lunch, you go to bed. And it's like one day after another, you look back and it's pretty much the same. And this is what we want. That when we talk about being normal, that's what we want. But conspiracies gives us excitement. So in terms of handling it, we sometimes, trying to engage in a meaningful logic conversation is not going to help. But what you can say is there is a technique that we use a lot, which is the exception conversation. So you start the conversation by asking someone not how they're feeling, or are you happy or are you not. You start by saying, what's been good recently? What have brought you joy? Have you seen anything nice these days? Have you eaten anything that gave you pleasure? What was your favorite food? So you're not ignoring the negative, but you're trying again, to open a new track in the neuronal pathways that help them to concentrate on the positive. So trying to disagree with them is not going to work, because they're not in a position to agree with you. It's the same as with religion. If I have a set of beliefs and someone else has a set of beliefs, we can't have that conversation. But we can have a neutral, positive conversation that will help both of us.
Thanks. Tanya. From Bob Oberg. I believe in changing myself. While I'm working on myself, may I do some external things too?
Absolutely. What we did today, the little meditation that we practiced today, has both aspects. You start by the technique of the shower. You know, there are many different ways that you can do that. I like to use the shower of light, but it's a body scan. And the body scan is a technique that goes from head to toe, and you kind of cleanse and re-energize each part of your body, and you can use that. I used a similar one when I started getting a lot of chest infections, and I used to picture like an X-ray, a laser ray going through my body and killing all the viruses and bacteria that were making me ill. And then the second part was when we irradiated outward. So from an energetic, spiritual perspective, we help ourselves, and the sending out of those positive vibrations will help the world as well. It will help to cleanse some of the negativity that's generated by negative thoughts and feelings around us. I use that a lot at work, not with clients, but with my colleagues, you know, when we sit in a shared office, and sometimes the conversations are very negative. So I get myself in my bubble. I do some breathing to place my mind on a positive frame of mind, and then I send out irradiation to my colleagues around me. What I find is that the conversation either moves away or stops, and the energy lifts. But also, from a practical perspective, you know, we can all contribute. And the way to contribute, we don't often need, we hardly need to leave our own houses to make a contribution. Many years ago, I was walking and I was late to work. And there was someone walking ahead of me who was walking very slowly. And I started getting really annoyed with that person. And then it hit me that that person didn't know I was behind them, didn't know I was late to work. It was my fault I was late to work. They were just going through their day as they would. So why was I now bombarding them with negative energies? So I changed my attitude. I asked that person forgiveness, sent them lots of love, and moved sideways on the pavement and walked past them. So a lot of the opportunities we miss of making a direct contribution to our world, we miss because we are looking over there. We are looking at the big changes, you know, the big earthquake that I can go and help to dig people out of. And we forget that, you know, being patient to our loved ones, being patient to our colleagues, giving, you know, the opportunity for someone to step in front of us when we are queuing up for the bus or a shop or something, and not being angry if someone is or not wearing a face mask these days, is a very direct way of making a contribution to others as well. And if the opportunity presents that we are able to do more, then absolutely go for it. But value the small contributions, because this is also very important. We need to value the small positive contributions we are able to make. And then if we're able to do more, we do more, but value also the small ones because they matter. They really matter.
Yeah. We can all be co-creators, right?
Yes.
Okay, so based on all that, what should be the characteristics of the new being for this time of transition?
Of the new being. So I'm taking that as what should we be like? For those who are spiritists, go to the gospel according to Spiritism and read the description of the good person and the good spiritist. All the characteristics are there. For those who are not spiritists but are familiar with the Gospels, Jesus summarized it very well. Do unto others as you'd like done to yourself. It is a great way to summarize very complex attitudes. Because if I want people to be patient with me, I need to be patient back. If I want people to forgive when I commit an error, I need to be able to forgive. It is okay to make mistakes. Okay, so the beings of, let's say, we wake up tomorrow and the transition finished. We are no longer a world of trials and atonements. We are now in a world of regeneration. What does this world look like? It looks like a world where people are kind to each other, where most crimes are not being committed anymore, where when governments or individuals disagree with their governments, they resolve that peacefully through conversation, negotiation. They understand that to have, we need to give. Basic principles that we've been battling with all the time. So it's not really basically putting into practice what we already know about the need to be a good person.
Good. I like that. Okay, the long one. So, law of destruction is one of God's law. It's a natural law, something that is part of our lives for evolution. Do you feel that we can take that law to help us cope with all these changes and make us less fearful in this transition?
You're absolutely right. One of the things that people don't talk enough about is death. What is death? There are two ways to perceive, to relate to that concept. There is the physical one, which is the destruction of a physical body. But we know that real death doesn't exist because the spirit doesn't die. Every day, trillions of our cells die and trillions more are born. Every day, houses are brought down, buildings are brought down, and new buildings are built. We need to learn to notice the opposite. When we notice that we are concentrating our attention on the destruction part, which brings us fear, uncertainties, anxieties, then we need to remember that there are things being built, developed, improved. That is very difficult, a difficult concept when I find that often when I'm sitting in the comfort of my home, which is dry, which is comfortable, not massive, but it works for me. I have food, I have way more food in the house than I need. I have all the things that materially I need to survive and to live a comfortable life. And then there are people who have nothing, who are starving, who don't have homes, who are hurt, who are being hurt. I work with people who live with abusive partners, and sometimes it's hard when I go home and I don't know what their weekend is going to be like. And it is tough. But faith is what keeps me going, because faith, logic faith, not blind faith, logic faith helps me to go through the checklist in my head that gives me comfort. So I believe that there is an energy in the universe that is all knowing, all loving, that has a purpose for everything. And I believe that this God loves every one of the children that it created. And I don't need to understand the purpose to feel comforted, because my mind cannot understand it yet. I don't have the capability to understand it yet. I mentioned the brain as a computer. So think about, like I had a trouble connecting today because the computer was going to use. I could not use my browser did not work with the link I was supposed to be using. So I'm using my mobile phone. So there are times in which my brain, the browser, cannot cope with certain information. So I just have to accept that I need to update my browser by continuing the work of developing my mental capacity, my spiritual capacity to be able to assimilate the information. So yes, there is distraction, but distraction does not mean bad things. Distraction is renewal. So instead of thinking about destruction, think about renewal. So things need to be recycled and renewed, including our bodies, including our thought patterns. From time to time, we need to check if we are going the right direction and change direction. So that helps to cope with those uncertainties, because then renewal is a much more hopeful word term than destruction.
Renewal. Good.
Renewal.
Okay. When we use the term end of the world, it feels like a much stronger message, even if it's a metaphor, for people to feel the impact of the changes. But some interpret it as a real end. Could you reinforce the symbol versus an actual end, physically speaking?
So let's think about the word world first. Okay, so what is a world? There is our inner world, there is the home world, there is the city world. All those are little worlds. There is a theory in physics, and please, I will not, for the physicists that might be listening, feel rested that I'm not going to go into physics, okay? But I think it is the theory that sees the universe as different bubbles, all interconnected. So there are many multiverses, okay? So think about psychologically, there isn't for us in our minds just one world. There isn't just the physical ball that is Earth. We live in our minds, our inner world. We live with a family grouping, our family world. We live in a city that is, and so on and so forth. So when we talk about the end of the world, for some people, the world ends when they lose their job, when their loved one discarnates, when there is a relationship breakup, when they realize that the set of beliefs they followed for most of their lives, they start questioning. For some, they dream, and that is more to do with the conspiracy theory part of our minds rather than the logical part of our minds. Expect the physical world to end. And let's be honest, if we look at the geological history of the planet Earth, it has happened for sure once, when the dinosaurs disappeared. So that could have been perceived as the end of the world, a cataclysm that destroyed a lot of the life forms that existed on Earth at that point. It destroyed the bodies, but not the Earth. However, the Earth, like any other entity, it's built of finite resources, the minerals, the water, the air composition that we breathe. All of this is changing constantly. So the Earth, there was, if you watch some of the history programs describing the geological history of the Earth, you find that there was a time in which we could walk from England to France because there wasn't a sea in between. You will hear that the African and the American continent were connected, and now it's not. So there has been many, many changes to this planet. It's just that in a lifetime we don't notice because they tend to be smaller changes. Now we can measure it and we can tell how long it's going to take for certain things to happen. And at some point, in billions and billions of years ahead of us, this Earth will cease to be able to sustain life as we know it. But that doesn't mean that life will cease to exist here. It's just that we don't know how it's going to develop. So I personally don't believe that there is an end to the world that is imminent. Maybe other worlds have suffered massive cataclysms. However, we need to extrapolate to our spiritual life when we start thinking things like that. First of all, it is extremely unlikely that it will happen anytime, let alone anytime soon. Even if it does, I tend to joke with my mom that, you know, if I hear that a comet is going to crash on Earth, rather than try to run from it like you see most people doing on disaster movies, I'm going to run towards it. I want to be standing at the best possible viewpoint because I want to see it coming and enjoy the view while it lasts. So, you know, but I'm not a positive person, you know.
All right. Okay, Tanya. So, last one that I'm going to ask you. Can you share with us a little bit about Spiritism in the UK and specifically the work you do there in Sheffield in terms of Spiritism? Because a lot of people are outside the UK that don't really know it well how it works there.
So Spiritism in the UK is still not as developed as in some countries. There are many groups in the UK and new groups being formed all the time. The interesting thing about this last few months was that our meetings have always, here in Sheffield, as in many other places, we've struggled with people joining our groups who are interested and able to make a practical contribution. So give talks and, you know, participate in the meetings in a more practical way. A lot of people come to enjoy the studies, which is absolutely fine, and we love that. So our group is always being very small, but it's grown since the pandemic started, because when we stopped having physical meetings with each other, then people who had an interest in our group are joining via Zoom now. So our group has grown. It's just that we don't meet in the same room, but we have people coming, you know, to our meetings from Brazil, from other parts of the UK, and really feeling part of it. So to me, it's been a great way to demonstrate to myself and others that what the world is going through in terms of the pandemic is being managed by those who know better from the spiritual side as a way of enabling us to be more fraternal, to be more connected, rather than taking things away from us. Also, because it forced us into looking inward and asking ourselves, you know, taking time off to really be with families and prioritizing what is really important rather than the must-haves and the next party. So the work, and there has been so many more activities that people can join. Like this one, for example, I had never done something like this before, and now it's become more or less the norm. And so I have great hopes for Spiritism in the UK. But I would like to see it also developing as in other countries where the Spiritist movement joined the social movement to improve the quality of life, both the mental life, spiritual life, and practical life of others. One of the things that we did this last few months, because we are not paying rent at the moment, so we are donating some of that money to a food bank, because a lot of people are having great difficulty, you know, because they lost their jobs or charity is not as available as it was before. So we are making a contribution in that way as well. And so it's been good.
Okay. Thank you, Tanya. Yeah, it's been a learning experience for all of us. And yeah, I think we are seeing many positive changes in terms of the dissemination of Spiritism. This series of talks that we do every Saturday at 11 a.m. that reaches a lot of people. It's one of the examples of how we can disseminate, especially us that work on disseminating Spiritism in English, right? So
yeah,
I want to thank you once again for being with us here. I want to thank you all that have been with us, and we're going to do a quick final prayer, asking for the spiritual benefactors to continue blessing us, to continue guiding us. We ask for their protection throughout the week, for the protection of those that are going through difficult times in this pandemic, for those that are losing lost loved ones, lost financial resources, or even those that are returning to the spiritual world, that they may be protected, blessed, assisted. We ask for the blessings for all throughout this week. We thank our Master Jesus for another opportunity to being reunited in his name. And we ask permission to close our meeting. So be it. Thank you all.